Many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Iniquity is sin, and sin is being practiced. Listen, God didn't save us in our sin, He saved us from our sin. In Romans chapter 6, Paul says, what shall we say then? Shall we sin all the more so that grace may abound? He said, God forbid. How shall we, which have been delivered from sin, dwell any longer therein? And so, practicing sin, allowing sin to continue in our lives, without turning from it, without repenting from sin, it just brings death, it brings separation, and it brings confusion amongst people. I used to work in a place in Knoxville with a guy who called himself a preacher. I won't mention his name, but he would run around and tweak girls in the butt and tell dirty jokes and stuff like that and claim to be a preacher. And one day he decided he was going to attack me on my beliefs, because I believe that you can't practice sin and go to heaven. And finally, I just gave him scripture. He couldn't refute it, but he just kept on saying, well, I know that I was saved, and therefore I'm saved now. And I told him, I said, brother, I didn't call him brother, I called him by his name, but I just use the term brother for the sake of anonymity. I can't say that word, but I said, brother, if you're right and I'm wrong, no problem, because I know I was born again. I know I was saved. Therefore, I don't have a thing to worry about if you're right. I said, but if I'm right and you're wrong, you're in a heap of trouble, boy.
Amen.
And here Jesus is saying one of the signs of the end times is that there'll be a great falling away. The love of many, because of sin, whether it's sin in their own lives or whether they condone sin in other people's lives, because sin may abound, the love, what love? The love of God shall wax cold. And you remember in Revelation chapter 2, when Jesus spoke, I believe it was to the Ephesian church, he said, you're doing all this stuff that's good. Everything that you're doing is right except for one thing. He said, you've left your first love. That was Jesus. It was a great church. It was as far as a church goes, it would have been a pastor's dream. I mean, they hated evil. They tried to do everything that was right, but they was doing it out of duty instead of devotion. That's what happens when a Christian's love goes cold. They keep serving God because of it's their duty.